The first place to create a return on investment is you. You have to invest in yourself. It's okay to take on debt to invest in yourself or in your business, for example. Today, we're going to talk about the old ball and chain. And ladies, I don't mean your husband. We're going to talk about debt as the ball and chain. But here's the thing about debt. Not all debt is ball and chain debt. So we're going to talk about today how rich people think about debt. And this is a really interesting subject. If you were to go onto Instagram, you're going to see one side, like the Dave Ramsey side, that says absolutely, positively, stay out of debt. All debt is bad. You're a bad person if you get into debt. And everything's about pay off your debt, stay out of debt. And that's one school of thought. There's this other side on Instagram that talks all about leverage. And if you want to get rich, leverage, 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 and basically just debt up your life as much as possible on more the investment or business side of debt. So there's these two sides. And what I can say is how I've built my wealth and created my financial freedom is somewhere in the middle. That I've used a lot of debt to build my fortune, but I was I didn't take a lot of risk, or I really mitigated as much risk as I could when I took on debt to make sure if something changed, I wouldn't be in a terrible situation. Example of that is 2008. And in 2008, I owned a decent amount of real estate, and a lot of my peers and those that I knew that owned real estate, invested in real estate, they were highly leveraged, meaning they owned a lot of properties, they borrowed as much as they could. And I'd say a good majority, if not almost all of those people that I knew really well that were real estate investors, they mostly went bankrupt, lost their houses to foreclosure, and were in really bad financial shape. And for me in 2008, it was a little beans and rice. It was a difficult time because there's a real estate crash and the recession and all that happening at once. But I was able to save my real estate because I didn't leverage as much. I didn't use as much debt as I could have. I put a lot of cash down and kept my borrowing at a minimum. So that what happened today is that real estate that I still own today from that period of time has 10x'd in value and is a big part of my overall portfolio. So because I didn't over leverage and was able to keep the real estate even during those tough times, much later, it's been a big payoff. So anyway, I just want to let you know there's these two schools of thought, and I sit somewhere in the middle. I don't think either one of them is necessarily saying that that's the best thing to do. And it certainly wasn't the best thing for me. So, but here's the thing when it comes to debt. Rich people think about debt differently. And love Dave Ramsey, he has a lot of good things, but what Dave Ramsey teaches is it's not going to make you rich. It's not going to create full financial freedom, but it's going to keep you in a financially positive, semi-secure place, which is a good thing and is much better than a majority of our population. But if you want to build real wealth and real financial freedom as quickly as possible, you have to think like a rich person. And rich people, like I said, think about debt differently. And how we think about debt is it's very categorical. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And that's it. So first of all, you have to understand the difference. But what broke people do is they reverse it, meaning they're getting into bad debt and they're afraid or avoid good debt. So that's the problem that's keeping so many high income earners or any families broke, is because they don't understand debt. Okay, so let's talk about that. And I'm just going to talk about the differences and really just a side-by-side comparison, and then we'll drill into this a little bit more. So what is good debt? The way I like to think of good debt is investment. That's the key word, is investment. Because when you're an investor and you invest in anything, what investment means I'm buying something hoping to make more money from the purchase, meaning getting a return on that investment. So if I buy real estate for $100,000 and it goes up to $200,000, I have $100,000, keeping it simple, but it's $100,000 return on that investment. So it was a good investment, in other words. But that's the way investors think. So that's when we look at good debt as a definition, I like to use the word investment. So the way to think about it is you take on debt as an investment in your financial future. So you're investing to get some type of gain, but versus using cash to buy an asset or something to get that return, you're using debt to be able to purchase that asset to get that return. So it's debt financing or cash financing, basically. So that's the difference. Is you're looking at, I'm using debt to purchase something as an asset, as an investment to be able to create a future return to improve my financial situation in some way. Now, the opposite of that is bad debt. And bad debt is way I like to describe that. It's buying a life you can't afford. And you can't afford it if you have a credit card, for example, and you can't pay off the balance every single month. That's buying a life you can't afford. You're carrying that balance. But it's buying a life that you can't afford by financing your lifestyle or a portion of your lifestyle for immediate gratification. I mean, I want it right now, or status, basically, and consumption, consumables. So that's the difference. You're investing, you're taking on debt to buy something, to purchase something as an investment for a gain. And basically you're buying something for instantaneous gratification, to buy status, like the logo on your bag or your shoes or your car, that emblem. Or just I can't afford to take the vacation, but I want to take the vacation, so I'm going to consume the vacation or go out to dinner or whatever the case is. So these are the differences between good debt and bad debt as a definition. So to break that down a little bit more, the way to think about this is then when we're looking at good debt, when it's an investment, for example, is the purchase will increase in value. So that means we're buying something with debt that we expect to go up in value. The second one is the purchase will make me more money. In business, that's called revenue. So it means I'm going to go use debt for this purchase to hopefully make me more money in my business, as an example. And the third one is the purchase will increase my earning potential. So again, all of these examples means I'm using debt for some longer term future gain, as opposed to using debt for the opposite, meaning buying the purchase on things that will go down in value. So what's an example of that? A car, a brand new car. Buying something that takes money out of my pocket versus increasing my income. It actually lowers my household, what money's in my household. So it's a negative on my finances future versus a gain. And then it's the opposite of earning potential, because when we get in this consumer debt, we tend to get so financially stressed out that it affects all parts of our life, and it doesn't allow us to actually use money to be able to maybe invest in ourselves to increase our earning potential. So bad debt is the opposite of this, meaning it's hurting us versus helping us. There's some key attributes between the difference between good debt and bad debt. So with good debt, it's usually a lower interest rate. With good debt. With bad debt, usually you're paying higher interest rates. And those credit cards, they tend to be much higher than some fixed rate, lower rates on more type investment debt. A second one is the purchase is to buy appreciating assets. What do you think the bad debt is? That's buying depreciating assets. On the good debt is that the long-term benefit outweighs the cost of the interest, right? So you're going to pay some interest, but if it's a good investment, the gain is going to more than pay for the principal and the interest. Over here, what happens is that bad debt adds financial burden without financial benefit. So you might get that short-term benefit that you bought the watch and it felt good for a day or two, but then that wears off and you're just left with the financial burden. So you want to look for the benefit versus the burden. That's the big key takeaway there. And benefit, burden. That's why we want to stay out of that debt. And if we're going to take on debt, be in this debt. And then the final one here is that, like I set up here, is that we're using debt to produce an ROI. Over here, there's no ROI. It's a negative return on the investment. Again, so just pretty easy to differentiate between the two. They're pretty much opposite. So as an example, I thought I'd do an example here. And well, before I do the example, let's look at some examples of what's good debt and what is bad debt. So here, making a purchase that's increased in value. So what comes to mind? Real estate. So when you do real estate and investment, for example, it goes up, it always goes up in value over time. It might go like this, but over 15 years, it's going to have a gain. So that's real estate, and that's why there's so many real estate investors that say invest in real estate, invest in real estate, invest in real estate. But if you're going to buy a $400,000 investment property, you don't have to put $400,000 cash in. You can borrow $300,000 of it from the bank and then pay the interest on that note and pay it back over time, but rent that place out and cash flow the property and all the things that you do with residential real estate investing. So you use debt or leverage to be able to take down that $400,000 house. And again, you borrow $300,000 of it, but you use the money you make from renting that to pay off that debt and pay out that debt. So that's a good example here. Now, bad debt. Here's the thing with real estate and bad debt. Real estate can be over here too. And what I see here is that it's people overbuying, over leveraging again to buy the big house, their big residential house, to show off to all their friends and show off all to the family and to their neighbors. Hey, I make a great income. They max out how much they can borrow. And now that real estate is bad debt because you become house poor. Remember that ball and chain? So many people's houses are that ball and chain because they're over leveraged. And my rule of thumb is that you don't want your mortgage payment to be more than 25% of your gross income, which is far lower than what the banks will lend you. And based on your income and your status, your house isn't going to look as impressive at 25% as opposed to 35% of your gross. So anyway, real estate can be bad debt if you over leverage yourself to buy too big of a house. It keeps you house poor. But in this case, especially real estate investing, it's going to appreciate, so that makes that borrowing good debt. So the second one here is income, to increase the income. And this is where I see people make mistakes all the time. And what happens is that they learn that debt's a bad thing, so they pay off all their consumer debt, all that credit card debt, but now they're terrified of debt. And then they heard Dave Ramsey, and Dave Ramsey said, stay out of debt. And this can just rob your future potential, because the way you get wealthy is something called return on investment. And the first place to create a return on investment is you. You have to invest in yourself. And a lot of people, they'll go into all this student loan debt that will never pay back in the tune of hundreds of thousands of dollars to get a degree that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to make any more income than if they didn't go to college. But once they graduate the college, they were fine getting into hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, but then they'll never pay any money to invest in themselves after that. So the thought here is that when you think of taking on debt, it's many times, it's like you might need to go into debt to invest in a program. When I was in my late 20s and early 30s, practically all the money I made, I'd reinvest into my personal development, professional development. And I'd put things on my credit cards to learn classes and to have coaches and to join masterminds. And that investment in me, because I believed in me that if I knew the right things, if I had the knowledge, was surrounded by the right people, I believed in me that I could pay all of that back. And I have been my best investment by a long shot. I own a lot of real estate. I have a lot of assets. I've made a lot of financial investments, but it's been the investment in me that's given me the knowledge to be able to make money in these other categories. My knowledge in me in investing in the masterminds, like I said, the coaches and all the business education that taught me how to be a good business owner and build 7-figure businesses, for example. So that's this thing, is it's an investment in you. And sometimes you need to take debt to do it. But so many people don't invest in themselves because they maybe don't have the cash to take the $3,000 program to learn how to manage their money and turn it into wealth, hint, hint. But so they don't have the money, but so they won't take on the debt. And ultimately, they don't get any wiser. They stay in the same patterns and have the same maybe financial breakdowns. But that's the thing, that you want to be able to, it's okay to take on debt to invest in yourself or in your business, for example. The third one here is increase in earning potential. So here might be a business loan, for example. And here, increase your earning potential. And this could be a student loan. But here's why I want to think about student loan is I'm talking about student loan differently than what normally comes to mind. What normally comes to mind with the student loan is just that I go to college, some type of institution, I go get a student loan, and then, after I graduate, I have to pay that off. So that's a student loan. But I want you to think about it differently in the context of what I was just saying is an investment in yourself. That to be a student, we have to take on this mindset to be a learner, to be a student at any age. I am still a student of so many things. And I think that curiosity and that student and that desire to continue to learn keeps me young, keeps me continuing to make more money, and so on and so forth. But I'm always considering myself a student of something. So when you think of yourself as a student, meaning I want to learn, I don't know, YouTube ads, for example, or how to use YouTube to make more money in my business. And then I can go borrow the money to maybe now be able to learn this new strategy to make more money in my business. I'm now a student of YouTube, for example. So can go take on debt, can invest it in YouTube. I'm the learner, but that's what I mean by a student loan, as opposed to student loan over here, which means you just go into debt without thinking about it and come out of college with a job that doesn't pay more than $50,000, $60,000 a year, but you have $150,000 student loan debt, for example, which is common. I see it all the time. So different type of student loan. I think a lot of people today are wondering, parents are saying, I'm not sure my kid needs to go to college because there's not a return on the financial investment because college is so expensive. What if my kid instead went to YouTube University, for example, and took on this type of student loan, which is far less expensive than this over here? So those are different types of loans. What goes over here, depreciating, like when we said buy depreciating assets, your car loan. It depreciates 40% in the first 5 years. Basically, when you drive it off the car lot, it's depreciating. You can't turn around the next day and get your money back out. So that's buying a depreciating asset, which we don't want to do. So that's the difference where people think of cars as assets. It's a depreciation asset, not a good place to put your money. Another one here, like, again, you might be able to get a business loan, or just think of sometimes a business loan, we might even need to put on our credit card or wherever we're going to get the money. But the business loan is something we put into our business. Over here, there's something called consumer loans. And this is something called buy now, pay later. And this is big right now. I mean, I'm just amazed at this buy now, pay later. And in my day, and especially in my mom's age, for example, it was called layaway. And layaway means that, hey, I want to buy this sofa at West Elm, maybe. There wasn't West Elm back then, but I want to buy that sofa and I'm going to put on layaway. And maybe I put a small deposit down, but I'm going to be saving money and making these maybe small payments or saving the money that then when it's all paid off, then I get the sofa. But now it's buy now, pay later, which it sounds similar, but it's very different. And this buy now, pay later, like a firm. So if you go to West Elm today and you buy your new house and you want to do $25,000 of new furniture in your house, it's just really easy. It's like, well, I don't have that cash, so I just go to a firm. And now they can charge up to like 36% APR for you to get this loan, and then you're paying it off. And it's just so easy to get these buy now, pay later loans all over the place, plus credit cards. So just super easy to get into bad debt and it starts stacking up and adding up versus, hey, I'm just going to save a little bit over time to be able to afford the cash. No, I want this sofa today. I don't want to wait 6 months or a year and save the money. And so I'm going to pay this 36% premium. And that's what bad debt is. Bad debt, the reason why it's high interest rate is you're paying this high premium to get something now, that instantaneous gratification, versus wait until later. And that's one of the key differences between broke people and rich people. Broke people, buy now, pay later. Rich people, delayed gratification. No, I'm going to save the money. I'm going to put the money to other places, and I can delay that gratification for my future self. But big key difference. So that's the differences here between real estate loan, business loan, student loan, bad loans over here. All right, so let's look at this, and I'll give you just a real life example. Let's see, what color do I want here? So let's say now the difference, why people are afraid of good debt. So here's the thing about debt, even good debt. There's a risk. There's always a risk to taking on debt. And the risk is, it's on the good side of debt, this side of the equation, is that bet's not going to pay off. So there's always a risk to taking off debt. And, you could buy a piece of real estate and it's a flop. So, you still have to pay off that debt and you didn't have the gain. You could go get a business loan, for example, and the business fails. You can maybe invest in yourself and buy a program, but you don't do the work. And so it's a bad investment because you didn't get the results, because you didn't put the time in. So there's no guarantee for the gain, but it's the opportunity for the gain. But let's look at this here. Let's just say it's going to take me $50,000 to start this YouTube channel, for example. And so I have my business, and my business is called, let's say, Wellthy, which is my business, and Wise Money. So these are my businesses, and these are my businesses where I teach, it's money education, money and life education. So Wise Money, which is my Wise Money school, for example, is where YouTube is. And so YouTube, where I say, hey, welcome to Wise Money here on YouTube, Wise Money is my school and Wise Money is my business. So now let's say last year in 2023, I didn't have a YouTube channel, which is true. And in 2024, I say, okay, I want to start a YouTube channel as a means to bring in more income or revenue to my business. This is all true. And then I do some numbers, and based on all the research it says it's probably going to cost you $50,000 to start your YouTube channel the way you want to start it. So I'm like, great. Now I look around in my business and like, is there $50,000 sitting around? And it's like, nope, no $50,000 sitting around. So I'm like, okay, if it's going to cost $50,000 for me to get this YouTube started in my business, where the money's going to come from? So I borrow it. So I borrow the money, and let's say it's at a 5% interest for a 5-year loan, right? Seems reasonable. I'm going to borrow $50,000 and be able to pay it off in 5 years at a 5% interest. So now this $50,000, it makes me an extra $80,000 of income on top of what I'm already making per year. Now, let's say I'm making $80,000 more in revenue, the business is, but this YouTube channel now is requiring some new technology, some new equipment, some editors, some content writers, some video, videography, that so on and so forth. So let's just say that now it costs me $40,000 extra per year to run this YouTube channel. So I'm making an extra 80. It's costing me an extra 40, which means I'm netting $40,000 more per year. So think about this. I borrowed $50,000. It's making me an extra $80,000, kind of once it's all employed on the top. It's costing me 40. I have $40,000 extra net. So that means if I didn't have access to this money, I wouldn't have been able to invest in the YouTube channel to put the money in to have this gain. So this is an example of good debt. So let's just see how this breaks down. So at this $50,000, 5%, 5 years, it's about $950 per month. And that's to pay back the principal and the interest on the loan. And the interest in this case is 5%. So that's basically $11,400 per year. So what I've done by borrowing is I've taken on an extra payment, the business, an extra payment of $950. It costs about $11,500 per year to have this opportunity to gain an extra $80,000. So how this breaks down, though, is this $40,000, I'm netting $40,000 extra per year times 5 years equals $200,000. So my gain over the 5 years is $200,000. The loan at 11.4 per year, the basically $950 a month for 60 months, is roughly $57,000. So that means by borrowing $50,000, I made an extra $143,000. So that is called a return on investment. That is using debt to make more money. And if I didn't use the debt and I had no other access to be able to have the capital to start the YouTube channel, no YouTube channel, no extra $143,000 in this example. I've also, like I've talked about at the beginning of this video, I've used a lot of debt over my career to buy lots of real estate and using banks and using individuals. But I've used a lot of debt in my life. So I've used all of these debts. And again, how rich people think about debt is different. I have zero personal debt. Once I got out of debt way back when, I never got into ever a dollar of personal debt ever again. And that's been like 20 years. Here, I'm in debt all the time. So I'm not afraid of debt. I work to be prudent about my debt, like not over leverage like I talked about earlier in the story. But real estate, I use debt all the time to buy real estate, to build real estate, to invest, to remodel, to do all the things. And so yes, I still do this today, and I've done it over the last 15 years or so. Business loans, here's an example. I borrow all the time in my business, and where I have zero debt personally, my business, I use debt a lot in my businesses as a means to make more money. Remember, to make more income or revenue. And student loans, I still invest in myself. One of my biggest line items on my P&Ls, both my personal P&L and my business P&L, is some sort of education. I'm always learning, investing, like I said, in coaching, in masterminds, in programs, because I want to learn, and things are evolving really fast. And so if I'm not learning, I'm going to be left behind. So that's just part of it. And why use my money when I can borrow it, when I'm confident that I can produce a return? So hopefully that really helps you distinguish the difference between good debt and bad debt. Where most people go wrong is they have a lot of debt over here and no debt over here. It's reverse order. So you want to pay off your consumer debt and don't get into any more consumer debt. Do not buy depreciating assets, consumables, that TV, the technology, the whatever you might do that you're going into debt over here. Instead, use that, pay off the debt over here, but invest in yourself. YouTube's awesome. YouTube is great free education, but to get the real help, to do the real work, to get the real accountability, to learn and do the things that are going to move the needle for you, you're probably going to have to invest in yourself. And sometimes that's debt in order to do it. Don't be afraid of it. You're going to produce a return, and you're going to differentiate yourself from everybody that's not doing the same thing. All right, to close all of this up, if you are in consumer debt, I'm offering you, since you've made it to the very end of this video, my what's called Accelerated Debt Elimination Program for free. It's a $250 program. I think that's the cost right now, but it's going to give you the exact methodology and strategy to pay off your debt fast. I've just put it in the description as a link, and just you'll get some instructions on how to access that course for free once you click the link. I think that's all I've got today. I guess I'll just sum up by saying, you don't want to be shackled to debt. See you next time.